The Bible. It's a collection of ancient texts, prophecies, poetry, history, and letters. It holds stories of kings, shepherds, wars, and miracles. But for many, the Bible remains an unopened mystery. Here at The Bible Explained, we're not just reading verses, we're exploring the cultural bedrock and the dramatic narrative woven through its 66 books. Hit that subscribe button and let the journey begin.
You look at the world around you, and you can't help but ask, why is there so much suffering? Why do terrible things happen to people who don't deserve it? I mean, it's a question that has haunted people forever, right? Well, today, we're going to dive into one of the most foundational explanations ever offered for why the world is so broken, the story of the fall. There's this writer, Barry Cooper, who tells this incredibly powerful story. He was in a cancer hospice, watching his own mom pass away, and at the same time, he sees this young family saying goodnight to their dad, who was only 35. Just completely overwhelmed by all that darkness, he's talking to a friend later, and his friend just says to him, "Barry, this is what it feels like to be under a curse." And wow, that feeling, we all know it in some way, don't we? That deep down sense that things are just not the way they're supposed to be. And that exact feeling, that sense of being under a curse, leads us right to this massive, unavoidable question. If a good God created everything, like the story goes, then where in the world did all this pain and brokenness come from? Well, the account in Genesis chapter 3 offers an answer that is, well, it's profound, and it's pretty startling. All right, so to really understand this answer, we've got to go back, way back, to the very beginning. Because the story of the fall, it doesn't start with the brokenness we're all familiar with. No, it starts with perfection, a paradise that had just one rule. So, picture this. The world at the very beginning was basically a perfect garden. I mean, no death, no sickness, no fighting, nothing like that. Adam and Eve, the first people, they lived in this amazing relationship with their creator, just enjoying a world that was, in every possible way, good. Now, in the middle of all this incredible freedom, God sets up just one boundary. Seriously, just one. He basically says, hey, the whole garden is yours, eat from any tree you want, except for this one. And you have to understand, this was never really about the fruit. It was all about the choice that fruit represented. And to get why this one rule was such a big deal, think about a wedding ring, okay? The ring itself is just a little circle of metal, right? But if you take it off and throw it away, whoa, that action means something huge. It's signaling the end of a relationship. Well, it's the same idea here. Eating a piece of fruit seems like a small thing, but what it symbolized was this massive declaration. It was saying to God, I don't trust you. I actually think you're holding out on me. So, the big question is, how did we get from that place of perfect trust to a place of total distrust? Well, this is where the story introduces a tempter, the serpent. And what's fascinating is that it lays out this kind of blueprint for deception that feels, well, it's ancient, but it's also incredibly modern. You'll see what I mean. Okay, so listen to how this starts. The serpent doesn't come in hot with some command or a blatant lie. No, it starts with a question, a subtle, slippery question. Did God really say? And that right there is the crucial first move. It takes God's word and puts it on trial, making it subject to our judgment. It slyly reframes God's incredible generosity as some kind of unfair restriction. So the serpent's strategy basically unfolds in 4 parts. It's a masterclass in manipulation. First, you question what God said. Second, you hint that God is basically a cosmic killjoy, trying to hold you back. Third, you just flat out deny the consequences. You won't die. And fourth, the masterstroke. You promise a shortcut to enlightenment. You promise that by disobeying, you'll actually become like God. And this is so important to get. The real sin, the actual fall, didn't happen when she took a bite of the fruit. It happened in her heart the second she believed the lie. The moment she decided, you know what, maybe God isn't totally good. Maybe he can't be trusted. The act of eating the fruit, that was just the outward sign of a rebellion that had already happened on the inside. And once that seed of distrust was planted in the mind, the physical act just set off this catastrophic chain reaction. It was like tipping over the first domino in a line that would end up fracturing the entire world. You can see the progression so clearly. Eve looks at the fruit, and she sees that it looks good to eat, it's beautiful to look at, and It could make her wise. That desire, which is now totally rooted in distrust, takes hold. It gives birth to the sin. And that sin, once it's done, it brings forth death, exactly what God warned would happen. But that amazing enlightenment they were promised, it was a total bust, a horrible anticlimax. Instead of becoming like God, their eyes were opened, all right, but to their own guilt and shame. Their very first feeling wasn't power or joy, it was fear. And their first impulse was to go hide from the one being they used to walk with in perfect harmony. And from there, the consequences just ripple out, touching every single part of what it means to be human. The story lays out what's called a curse, pain in childbirth, conflicts between people, work becoming a frustrating toil, and then, finally, getting kicked out of paradise and the introduction of death itself. And this right here, this is the story's explanation for that exact feeling Barry Cooper had in that hospice, the feeling of living in a world that is under a curse. But here's the thing. The story doesn't just end there in complete darkness and despair. Right in the middle of all the judgment and the consequences, the narrative drops in this incredible and kind of mysterious promise, a first glimmer of hope. As God is delivering the consequences to the serpent, he says something amazing. It's often called the very first whisper of the gospel. He promises that one day, a descendant of the woman, of Eve, will come. And yeah, this descendant will be wounded by the serpent, but in that same fight, he's going to deliver a fatal blow. He's going to crush its head and ultimately reverse the curse. In this moment, it sets up this powerful theme of reversal that you see all through the rest of the Bible. It creates this kind of perfect, profound symmetry. See, the problem that wrecked the world, the darkness and death, it all entered through the choice of one man. And so it would be solved by the choice of another man. All the damage that was done by the first Adam, as he's often called, would be completely undone by a second Adam, Jesus Christ. And the parallel here is just, it's stunning when you see it. The whole fall was set in motion by a tragic take-eat in a garden that led to death and separation. The reversal is set in motion by a redemptive take-eat at the Last Supper, where Jesus offers his own body, which leads to life and reconciliation. So you see, the story of the fall isn't just some dusty ancient tale about why the world is messed up. It's a story that lays out two completely different paths for humanity, both built on a choice. There's a path of distrust that ends in death, and there's a path of trust that leads to life. And so the question it kind of leaves hanging in the air for all of us is, which of those two paths is defining your reality?
The Bible isn't just a history book. It's a living, challenging text. As you reflect on what we covered today regarding this topic, consider how this new context changes your reading of the verses. If you appreciated this breakdown, sharing it with just one friend who struggles with understanding the Bible is the best way you can support the channel. Subscribe for more, click here for your next explanation, and never stop seeking clarity. Until next time.